Have you ever felt the frustration of forgetting something important at the exact moment you needed it? Maybe it was the name of a colleague during a meeting, the key idea you wanted to share in a conversation, or even a detail from a book you had just finished reading. In those moments, it feels like your mind has betrayed you, leaving you embarrassed, stressed, or even doubting your own abilities. It can feel discouraging when you want to move forward in life, but your memory does not seem to support you. For many people, this experience is not rare, but almost daily. They walk into a room and forget why they entered. They read a page, but cannot recall what they just read. They listen to instructions, but struggle to remember the steps a few minutes later. Over time, these small lapses create a heavy burden. You may start questioning your intelligence, your focus, or even your future potential. The truth is, memory touches every part of our lives. It is not just about storing facts, but about feeling confident in yourself, keeping promises to others, and being able to show up at your best in both work and relationships. Now imagine for a moment how different your life would be if remembering was not a struggle but a strength. Imagine recalling names the instant you hear them, holding on to knowledge long after reading it, or walking into a situation with full confidence because you trust your mind to support you. How much more capable and secure would you feel? How many more opportunities would you be ready to accept? That feeling of freedom is not only possible, but closer than you think. The key lies in understanding that memory is not something fixed or unchangeable. Memory is a skill, and like any skill, it can be trained, strengthened, and expanded with the right approach. Once you know how to work with your brain instead of against it, you open the door to a new kind of power. The power to learn faster, to connect more deeply with people, and to trust yourself in every situation. In the journey ahead, you will discover proven methods that show you how to train your memory effectively. These are not abstract theories, but practical tools you can start using today. They have been tested by science, applied by successful people across many fields, and adapted for anyone willing to learn. By the end, you will not only understand how your memory works, but you will also hold in your hands the techniques to transform it into a tool for growth and confidence. Welcome to Fluent English with Radio. Here, we are more than just a channel. We are your companion on the path of personal growth, guiding you with knowledge, motivation, and encouragement so that every step you take feels stronger and clearer. Together, we will explore ways to sharpen your memory and unlock the best version of yourself. Why do we forget so easily? Even though memory can be trained, most people live as if it cannot. They wake up each day facing the same struggles, repeating the same mistakes, and believing the same limiting ideas about their mind. One of the biggest problems is the belief that memory is only a gift that some people are born with. When you think this way, you stop yourself before you even begin. You may say, "I just have a bad memory," or "I am not smart enough to remember details." This mindset creates a wall between you and your potential. Another issue is the way our modern world is built. We are surrounded by distractions at every moment. Notifications, endless scrolling, constant noise, and the pressure to multitask make it almost impossible to focus deeply on one thing. Without focus, the brain does not have the chance to store information properly. You may spend hours studying, reading, or listening, but if your attention is scattered, your brain cannot move information from short-term to long-term memory. The result is frustration and wasted effort. On top of that, many people rely on habits that weaken memory over time. They try to memorize by reading something again and again in a short period. But this cramming only works for a few hours or days. After that, the knowledge fades quickly. This is why so many students feel empty after an exam, or why professionals forget what they learned in a training session soon after it ends. The method itself is flawed, yet people blame themselves instead of the approach. There is also the problem of passive learning. Too many learners believe that simply reading or listening is enough. They think if they expose themselves to information, it will stick. In reality, memory requires active involvement. Without using techniques like recall, visualization, or connection, the brain treats new information as unimportant and lets it fade away. This explains why you may read a book and forget almost everything about it within a week. The problem is not your intelligence. The problem is the lack of active methods. Stress and fatigue also play a huge role. When your body is tired or your mind is filled with worry, the brain prioritizes survival instead of learning. Sleep deprivation, poor diet, and lack of movement reduce blood flow and energy to the brain. Anxiety and pressure create mental blocks that make it harder to store and retrieve information. In other words, if your lifestyle does not support your brain, your memory cannot perform at its best. Finally, there is the problem of underestimating the value of memory itself. Many people depend heavily on technology to remember things for them. Phones hold our contacts, reminders, notes, and even the facts we once tried to carry in our heads. While technology is useful, over-reliance on it weakens our natural ability. The less we use our memory, the weaker it becomes, just like a muscle that is never exercised. Together, these problems form a cycle. You forget something important. You feel embarrassed or frustrated. You tell yourself you are not good at remembering. You depend more on technology, cram more, or give up trying. The result is even weaker memory and even lower confidence. This cycle can quietly damage your motivation and self-esteem over time. But here is the hopeful truth. None of these problems mean your memory is broken. They simply show that your current approach is not working. Once you change your habits, your methods, and your mindset, everything shifts. You no longer see memory as an enemy, but as a partner. You no longer see forgetting as failure, but as a sign that you need the right strategy. Science and real-life examples prove again and again that memory can be trained at any age. Imagine the relief of walking into a meeting and remembering every detail you prepared. Picture yourself recalling names effortlessly, recalling knowledge weeks or even months later, or feeling proud because you know you can trust your own mind. These results are not limited to a special group of people. They are available to anyone who chooses to step out of the cycle and take action. The problem is real, but the solution is within reach. And the first step is to see memory not as a fixed limit, but as a skill waiting to be unlocked. Once you accept this, the path forward becomes clear. You will no longer carry the weight of forgetting as a personal weakness. Instead, you will hold the tools to transform your memory into one of your greatest strengths. Understanding how memory works. If you want to improve your memory, the first step is to know how it really works. Many people think memory is just natural talent. They believe some people are born with a good memory while others are not. This is not true. Memory is not a fixed gift. It is a skill that can be trained and improved. When you understand how memory functions, you will see that forgetting is not a sign of weakness. It only means your brain has not yet been trained in the right way. Memory works in stages. The first stage is short-term memory. This type of memory is used when you need to keep information for a very short time. For example, when you look up a phone number and remember it just long enough to type it in. Short-term memory is helpful, but it does not last long. If you do not pay attention or repeat the information, it quickly disappears. The second stage is long-term memory. This type of memory stores information for days, months, or even years. When information is in long-term memory, you can recall it later with much less effort. The goal of memory training is to move important information from short-term memory into long-term memory. This is how knowledge becomes stable and reliable. For information to move from short-term to long-term memory, two things are necessary: attention and meaning. Attention is the first requirement. If you are distracted or multitasking, the brain cannot store information properly. You may read a page or listen to a person, but if your mind is somewhere else, the information will not stay. Even a few seconds of full focus can help your brain register new knowledge. The second requirement is meaning. The brain does not hold on to information that feels unimportant. If you want to remember something, you must connect it to what you already know or give it personal value. For example, when learning a new word, it helps to link it with another word you already understand. If you are learning the name of a person, repeating it and attaching it to something familiar increases your chance of remembering. When the brain sees meaning, it marks the information as useful and stores it more effectively. Another important factor is repetition. Scientific studies show that memory becomes stronger when information is reviewed several times. Each time you recall knowledge, the connections in your brain grow deeper. Without review, the brain starts to let go of the information. This is why people forget quickly after studying if they do not practice. Repetition should not be rushed. It works best when it is spread over time and when you actively try to recall instead of just reading again. Emotion also plays a role. Information connected to emotion is often easier to remember. This is because the brain treats emotional experiences as more important. For learning, this means you can improve your memory by attaching even small feelings to the material. It could be interest, curiosity, or a sense of achievement when you recall something correctly. These emotions act as signals to keep the memory stronger. It is also important to know the limits of memory. The brain cannot keep every detail of daily life. It selects what to remember based on attention, meaning, and emotion. This selection is not a weakness. It is a natural process to protect you from overload. The good news is that by understanding this process, you can guide your brain to remember what really matters to you. Here is how this works in practice. If you are studying for an exam or preparing for a presentation, do not only read the material once. Focus your full attention on it. Connect the ideas to knowledge you already have. Review it at different times and add some emotional value, like feeling satisfaction when you answer correctly. Each of these actions helps your brain transfer the information into long-term memory. If you learn how short-term and long-term memory function, why focus is essential, why meaning matters, how repetition strengthens recall, and how emotion helps storage, you will see that memory is under your control. Understanding how memory works prepares you for the next step. Once you know the system, you can begin to apply specific techniques to make learning faster and more effective. Method 1. Visual storytelling. One of the most practical techniques for improving memory is visual storytelling. This method is based on how our brain works. Research shows that people remember pictures and stories much better than plain words. If you only see or hear information without context, you may forget it quickly. But if you turn that information into an image with a small story, it becomes easier to store and recall later. The reason is simple. Our brain processes images faster than text, and stories give structure to what we learn. When you create a picture in your mind and connect it to a short event, you are giving your brain both a clear signal and a reason to keep the information. This process turns abstract facts into something meaningful and easier to recall. Let's take an example. Suppose you meet a person named Lily. If you only hear her name once, you may forget it by the next day. But if you stop and imagine her standing in a garden full of lilies, you create a mental picture. If you add a small action, such as her picking up a flower, your brain has an even stronger link. The next time you see her, the image will help you recall the name more easily. The same idea works with vocabulary. Imagine you are learning the English word bridge. Instead of repeating the word again and again, you can picture yourself walking across a bridge. You can even imagine the sound of footsteps or the view from the top. These details turn the word into an experience, and experiences are easier to remember than plain definitions. Visual storytelling is not only about creating pictures, it is also about making the image active and unusual enough to stand out. Ordinary details often fade, but specific and slightly surprising details stay longer in the mind. For example, if you are learning the word apple, do not just imagine a fruit on a table. Imagine holding a shiny red apple in your hand and taking a bite. The taste and action make the memory stronger. To apply this method effectively, start with small steps. Choose one piece of information you want to remember and create a mental scene around it. Keep the story simple. It does not need to be long or complicated. A name connected with a flower, a word linked to an action, or a number turned into a picture is enough. Once you practice, building these images will become faster and more natural. Consistency is important. When you create a story, review it a few times in your mind. This repetition helps fix the image more firmly. You do not need hours of practice. Even a few seconds of review can make a difference. The more you use the method, the easier it becomes to build strong memories on the spot. This technique also makes learning more enjoyable. Many learners feel tired when they repeat words or facts with no context. By turning information into pictures and stories, you add creativity and personal connection. It feels less like hard work and more like play. Enjoyment itself is a powerful tool because when you like the process, you are more likely to continue. Another benefit of visual storytelling is flexibility. You can use it in many areas of life. If you are preparing for an exam, you can use it to remember terms and dates. If you are at work, you can use it to recall names and tasks. Even in daily life, you can use it to remember shopping lists, addresses, or instructions. Once you learn the method, it becomes a skill you can apply anywhere. Of course, no method is perfect without practice. At first, you may feel it takes time to create these stories. That is normal. With practice, your brain becomes quicker at building images. Soon, you will find yourself making connections almost automatically. What feels like effort in the beginning becomes a natural habit. The long-term value of this method is very clear. Studies have shown that people who combine words with images remember far more than those who rely on text alone. In some cases, recall rates rise from 10% with only words to more than 60% when words are paired with pictures. That difference can change how confident you feel in your learning. If you start today, keep it simple. Pick one new word, one name, or one fact. Build a quick picture in your mind, add a small action, and review it a few times. Notice how much easier it becomes to recall later. Each small success will motivate you to keep going. Visual storytelling is not about talent or creativity. It is about using your brain in a way that matches how it naturally works. Method 2. Connecting information with emotion. In the previous method, we talked about visual storytelling, which uses pictures and small stories to make information easier to remember. That technique works mainly on the level of images and imagination. You create a scene in your mind so the brain has something clear to hold on to. But memory is not only about what you see in your imagination, it is also about how you feel. The brain gives special priority to experiences that carry emotions. When something makes you feel proud, happy, curious, or even a little stressed, your brain marks it as important and keeps it longer. Many people are surprised to learn that emotion plays a very important role in memory. They often think memory is just about logic, repetition, or intelligence. But in reality, the brain decides what to keep not only by attention and meaning, but also by how much emotion is involved. When something makes you feel strongly, the brain marks it as important and stores it more deeply. Think about moments in your life that you still remember clearly. They are usually connected with strong feelings. A happy celebration, a difficult challenge, or even a small success can stay in your mind for years. This is because the emotional part of the brain, called the amygdala, works together with the memory system to keep experiences that seem important for survival or personal growth. When learning, you can use this natural process to your advantage. If the information feels dry or meaningless, your brain will not hold it for long. But if you attach an emotion, even a small one, the memory becomes stronger. For example, if you are studying history, do not only read the date of an event, imagine the feelings of the people who lived through it. Try to understand the fear, the hope, or the sacrifice. This emotional layer helps you remember the event more clearly. The same applies when you learn new vocabulary. Suppose you are trying to remember the English word success. Instead of only repeating it, connect it with a time when you felt proud of yourself. Feel again the happiness of reaching a goal, no matter how small. This connection turns the word into something personal. Later, when you need it, the word comes back more easily because it is tied to your own life. Even creating a sense of curiosity or fun is enough to strengthen the memory. This approach is used by many successful students and professionals. Medical students, for example, often connect knowledge to patient stories. Instead of only memorizing symptoms, they link the information to real experiences of patients. This emotional connection makes the knowledge stay longer and also makes it more meaningful in their future work. You can apply this method in daily life as well. When you meet someone new, try to connect their name with a feeling. Maybe they remind you of a kind teacher, or maybe their smile makes you feel comfortable. If you notice how you feel and connect it to the name, you will recall it more easily later. It is important to understand that emotions do not have to be dramatic to work. Even small feelings like curiosity, satisfaction, or amusement are enough to help memory. What matters is that your brain sees the information as more than just numbers or letters. when the information carries emotion, the brain treats it as valuable. To practice this method, start small. Choose one fact you want to remember today. Add a feeling to it, either from your own life or from your imagination. Review the fact later and recall the same feeling. At first, you may need to stop and think about what feeling to attach. Later, you will find yourself doing it almost automatically. This habit makes your memory more active and more reliable. The benefits go beyond just stronger recall. Connecting information with emotion also makes learning more enjoyable. Instead of seeing study as a dry task, you add life and energy to it. This change in attitude increases motivation and reduces boredom. Motivation is powerful because when you enjoy learning, you want to continue, and that consistency is what produces long-term results. The message is simple. Your brain listens to your emotions. When you care about something, even in a small way, you remember it better. By practicing this method, you give your brain a reason to keep the information. Over time, you will notice that recalling facts, names, and ideas becomes easier because they are no longer just empty details. They are connected to how you feel. Method 3. Spaced repetition. Spaced repetition is a simple idea with powerful results. Instead of reviewing material all at once, you review it several times over increasing intervals. The timing of each review is the key. If you review too soon, the brain does not get challenged. If you wait too long, the memory may fade completely. When you review just before forgetting, you give the brain the perfect signal to strengthen the memory. This principle was first studied by Hermann Ebbinghaus in the late 1800s. He created the forgetting curve, which shows how quickly we forget new information. Without review, memory fades rapidly, especially in the first hours and days after learning. But when you review at the right time, the forgetting curve slows down. Each review makes the memory stronger, and you can wait longer before the next one. Applying this method is easier than many people think. Let's say you are learning the word apple. You study it once. 15 minutes later, you review it quickly. After 6 to 8 hours, you review it again. The next day, you test yourself once more. Each step takes only seconds, but it multiplies the strength of the memory. After a few more reviews with longer gaps, the word is stored in your long-term memory. The method works because it uses active recall. Instead of only reading the answer, you try to bring the word back from your memory. This act of pulling information out is what trains the brain. Passive review, like reading notes again and again, feels comfortable but is far less effective. Active recall with spaced repetition may feel harder, but it is this small struggle that strengthens memory. You can use very simple tools to practice spaced repetition. A notebook with questions and answers, or a set of flashcards, is enough. Write the word or concept on one side and the explanation on the other. Test yourself at the right intervals. If you prefer technology, apps like Anki, Quizlet, and Memrise make the process automatic. They use algorithms to schedule reviews based on how well you remember each item. The most important factor, however, is not the tool. It is consistency. Spaced repetition only works if you keep using it. 10 or 15 minutes a day is more effective than hours of irregular study. Small steps, repeated regularly, build lasting results. There are common mistakes to avoid. Some learners review too late, after the memory has already disappeared. This is no longer strengthening, but relearning. Others review too early, before they have had a chance to almost forget. This does not give the brain enough work to build stronger connections. The key is balance. Challenge the memory, but do not allow it to vanish completely. Another mistake is trying to memorize too much at once. Start with a small number of items, maybe 5 to 10, and practice until the process feels natural. As your confidence grows, you can add more material. What matters is not the quantity of information, but the quality of review. The benefits of spaced repetition go beyond memory itself. When you recall information successfully again and again, you begin to trust yourself more. You walk into a conversation or a meeting with less fear of forgetting. You prepare for exams or presentations with greater calm. This confidence reduces anxiety and builds motivation to keep learning. Spaced repetition also saves time. Many people waste hours cramming material in one sitting, only to forget it quickly. With this method, you use short, focused reviews spread across days or weeks. The total time is less, but the results are stronger. Learning becomes not only more effective, but also less stressful. Imagine how this could support your goals. If you are learning English, you can use spaced repetition to remember vocabulary, grammar rules, or phrases. If you are studying for work, you can use it to keep key facts fresh. Even in daily life, you can use it to recall names, dates, or instructions. The method is flexible and can be applied anywhere. The message is clear. Forgetting is not a sign of weakness. It is simply how the brain works. But you do not have to accept it as permanent. With spaced repetition, you can change the way your memory holds information. You can make knowledge stay with you longer, and you can recall it with more confidence. Start small. Pick a few items today, review them at the right times, and notice the difference. Over weeks and months, these small steps will create a strong foundation of knowledge that supports your growth in every area of life. Method 4. Memory Palace, Method of Loci. This method has been used for centuries, even by speakers in ancient times who needed to remember long speeches without notes. The reason it works so well is that our brains are naturally strong at remembering places and spaces. By placing information inside a familiar space in your mind, you create a structure that makes recall easier and more reliable. The first step is to choose a location that you know very well. It could be your own home, your school, or even the path you take to work. The key is that you can picture this place clearly in your mind. The more details you remember about the location, the better it will serve as a memory palace. Once you have the location, you create a route inside it. Imagine walking from one spot to another in a clear order. For example, if you use your home, you might start at the front door, then move to the living room, then the kitchen, and finally the bedroom. Each of these places will serve as a station where you can place information you want to remember. Now you begin to link your information with the locations. Suppose you have a shopping list: apples, milk, and bread. You can place the apples on the kitchen table, imagine a carton of milk standing on the sofa, and see a loaf of bread resting on your bed. Later, when you want to recall the list, you simply walk through the house in your mind. As you enter each room, the item you placed there comes back to you. This technique works for more than just shopping lists. You can use it to remember names, numbers, vocabulary, or even entire presentations. For example, if you need to give a talk with 5 key points, you can place each point in a different room. During your talk, you mentally walk through your memory palace and collect each point in order. The method of Loci is effective because it combines structure, visualization, and active recall. The structure comes from the route you create, which gives your brain a clear path to follow. The visualization comes from the mental images you attach to each location. And the active recall happens when you mentally walk through the space and bring back the information. These three elements together make memory much stronger. To practice this method, start with something simple. Choose a short list of 5 items and place them in 5 locations in your house. Walk through the house in your mind and review the items a few times. Notice how much easier it is to recall the list compared to memorizing without the palace. Once you are comfortable with short lists, you can expand to longer ones or more complex information. It is important to make the images vivid enough to stand out. If the picture in your mind is too plain, your brain may not notice it. Add size, color, or even small actions to make the item more memorable. For example, instead of just placing an apple on the table, imagine a giant apple glowing brightly. The extra detail helps the brain remember it better. Another tip is to keep the route consistent. Do not change the order of rooms or locations each time you practice. The power of the memory palace comes from the stable structure. When the path is always the same, your brain learns to trust it, and the information becomes easier to recall. Some learners worry that this method may take too much time. In reality, once you practice a few times, it becomes very quick. Your brain already knows the location, so you only need seconds to place information inside it. With practice, you can build multiple palaces for different subjects or tasks. One palace can be your home, another can be your school, and another can be a street you walk every day. The benefits of the memory palace are not limited to students. Professionals use it to remember presentations, lawyers use it to keep track of legal points, and even actors use it to memorize lines. The method is flexible and can be adapted to almost any type of information. Like other memory methods, the memory palace works best when you practice regularly. At first, it may feel unusual to place information in mental spaces, but after a few tries, it becomes natural. Soon, you will find yourself using it automatically whenever you want to remember a list or a sequence. The memory palace shows us that memory is not about force. It is about working with the brain in ways it naturally prefers. Our minds are very good at remembering places, so this method simply takes advantage of that strength. By turning your familiar spaces into storage for knowledge, you give yourself a tool that can make memory reliable and even enjoyable. Method 5. Handwriting and active recall. Many learners believe that simply reading and reviewing notes is enough to remember information. They sit with a book, go over the same page several times, and hope the knowledge will stay. But often, when they try to recall the material later, it feels like the information has disappeared. The reason is simple: passive review does not give the brain enough exercise. To build stronger memory, you need to practice active recall, and handwriting is one of the best ways to do it. Active recall means pulling information out of your memory without looking at the source. Instead of just reading the answer, you try to remember it by yourself. This process may feel harder than rereading, but that effort is exactly what strengthens memory. When the brain works to find the answer, the connection becomes deeper, and the chance of forgetting becomes smaller. Handwriting adds another layer to this process. Research shows that writing by hand engages more areas of the brain than typing. When you write, you slow down, focus more, and connect physically with the information. This extra involvement makes the memory stronger. Some studies suggest that handwriting can improve recall by up to 25% compared to typing. Here is how you can apply this method. After reading a chapter or lesson, close the book and write down the main ideas from memory. Do not look back at the text while writing. When you finish, compare your notes with the original material. This will show you what you remembered well and what you need to review again. This simple routine transforms reading into active learning. Flashcards are another useful tool for active recall. Write a question on one side and the answer on the other. Test yourself by looking at the question and trying to recall the answer before flipping the card. Writing the cards by hand makes the process even more powerful. Each time you use the cards, you are training your brain to retrieve information quickly. Mind maps can also support this method. Take a piece of paper and write the main topic in the center. Then add branches with subtopics and details, all from memory. The act of drawing connections helps you organize information in a way that is easier to understand and recall later. Again, handwriting makes the process more personal and memorable. One example of how this method is used comes from famous thinkers like Albert Einstein. He often wrote his ideas by hand, not just to record them, but to develop and strengthen them. By writing, he engaged his brain more deeply and clarified his thoughts. While you may not be working on scientific theories, the same principle can help you remember what you are learning. The benefits of handwriting and active recall go beyond stronger memory. They also improve understanding. When you explain something in your own words on paper, you are forced to process it more carefully. This prevents shallow learning and builds real comprehension. It also develops critical thinking because you must decide which details are important and how they connect. Some learners worry that this method takes too much time. It does take a bit longer than reading passively, but the results are far better. 10 minutes of active recall with handwriting can be worth more than an hour of rereading. Over time, you save energy because you do not need to repeat the same material endlessly. To practice consistently, start small. After studying for 20 minutes, spend 5 minutes writing what you remember. Use flashcards for key terms or short facts. Once a week, create a short mind map of what you have learned. These small habits build a strong routine that makes active recall a natural part of your study. The combination of handwriting and active recall is a practical way to take control of your learning. It changes the role of the learner from passive receiver to active builder of knowledge. Start today with one simple step. Take a small topic, close the book, and write what you can remember. Do not worry if it is incomplete. Compare, correct, and try again later. With steady practice, this method will give you a deeper memory, stronger understanding, and greater confidence in your ability to learn. Caring for your health to improve memory. Memory is not only shaped by study techniques, it is also deeply connected to your physical and mental health. Even if you use the best methods, your memory will not work well if your body and mind are exhausted. Taking care of your health gives your brain the energy and balance it needs to store and recall information effectively. One of the most important factors is sleep. During sleep, the brain processes what you learned during the day and turns it into long-term memory. Without enough rest, this process is interrupted. Many people try to stay up late to study, but they often forget much of the material the next day. Research shows that adults need about 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep each night for their memory to function well. Setting a regular bedtime and avoiding screens before sleep can make this habit easier. Nutrition also plays a key role. The brain uses a lot of energy, and it needs the right fuel to work properly. Foods rich in omega-3 fatty acids, such as salmon, walnuts, and chia seeds, are known to support brain health. Fruits and vegetables provide antioxidants that protect brain cells. Drinking enough water is also essential because even mild dehydration can reduce concentration and recall. By choosing meals that include these foods, you give your memory a stronger foundation. Exercise is another habit that benefits memory. Physical activity increases blood flow to the brain, bringing more oxygen and nutrients. Even light activities, such as walking for 20 minutes a day, can make a difference. Regular exercise also reduces stress and improves sleep quality, which both help memory. You do not need to train like an athlete. Consistency with simple movements is enough to see results over time. Mental health cannot be ignored either. Stress and anxiety interfere with the brain's ability to store and retrieve information. When you are worried, your body produces stress hormones that make it harder to focus and recall. Practicing relaxation techniques such as meditation, breathing exercises, or mindfulness for just 5 minutes a day can reduce these effects. Some people also find that journaling or spending time in nature helps them calm their mind and improve clarity. It is useful to look at how successful people manage their health to support their memory and performance. For example, Elon Musk, despite his busy schedule, has shared that he pays attention to sleep and diet to keep his mind sharp. Many athletes and leaders follow similar habits, making sure their bodies and brains are aligned. This shows that memory improvement is not only about mental effort, but also about lifestyle choices. To apply this in your life, start with small, realistic steps. Choose one area to improve first. If sleep is your biggest challenge, set a consistent bedtime. If diet is the issue, add one brain-friendly food to your meals each day. If stress is high, practice a short breathing exercise in the morning. These small actions create momentum and lead to lasting change. Taking care of your health is not a separate task from learning. It is part of the learning process itself. When your body and mind are in balance, your memory becomes sharper. Your confidence grows, and your path to personal development becomes clearer. Your journey to a stronger memory. We have explored together how memory truly works and the methods that make it stronger. From understanding the difference between short-term and long-term memory, to using visual storytelling, spaced repetition, emotional connection, the memory palace, and active recall through handwriting. Each step has shown that memory is not a fixed talent, it is a skill that can be trained. What connects all these methods is the message that you are not powerless when it comes to memory. Forgetting does not mean weakness. It simply means your brain needs the right signals. By learning how to provide those signals, you open the door to remembering names, facts, and knowledge with much greater ease. You may be asking yourself, where should I start? The answer is, start small, but start today. You do not need to use all the methods at once. Pick one that feels easiest or most useful right now. Maybe it is spaced repetition with 5 vocabulary words. Maybe it is visual storytelling with one new name you learn. Maybe it is writing down what you remember after reading a single page. The method is less important than the action. Once you begin, consistency is what matters. Memory grows stronger through regular practice, not through one big effort. Even 5 to 10 minutes a day can bring real progress if you keep going. Each small success will give you confidence, and that confidence will motivate you to continue. Over time, the results will build on each other, and your memory will become one of your strongest tools. Remember, you do not need to compare yourself to others. Your progress is personal, and your journey is unique. Some people will see results quickly, while others will need more time. Both are normal. The key is to trust the process and keep moving forward. And as you continue, remember that you are not alone. Here at Fluent English with Riadio, we are with you on this journey. Our channel will keep bringing you knowledge, motivation, and practical tools to support your growth. If you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and stay connected for the next lessons. Together, we will keep moving forward, step by step, toward a sharper mind and a stronger future.